Well, Neil, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a big pleasure because it made me come back despite having retired last year from teaching. So that is very good. I'm not sure my lecture is very distinguished, but I think you will leave this room differently in an hour. If not, I have failed. Because I will challenge a bit narratives we live in. I will show you some data, and actually when I don't cite them, they are usually from Clarivate, bibliometric data. I will talk a lot about a business that has a lot of conflicts of interest, so I should start with a disclaimer. I'm an environmental epidemiologist, but I'm retired from that, so I will not talk about that. I'm responsible, I have a mandate of the Swiss School of Public Health Directorate to represent the two journals of the Swiss School, International Journal of Public Health and Public Health Reviews. They are both about 100 years old. You should know SSPH Plus as the owner is a not-for-profit foundation of 13 universities in Switzerland. They do not subsidize the journal. They have been very clear with the decisions that the journals have to be fully self-contained under a full-cost model. We have a fully independent editorial office. It's mandated to Swiss TPH in Basel. Chris Woodrow is the head of this. The journals are open access since January 2021, after a tender that I was leading over 2 years with 6 companies to choose a publisher. We are now with Frontiers in Lausanne, who is our publisher. Before we were with Springer. Now Springer Nature, and PHR was with BMC, also Springer Nature. So I have some experience in the field, but I have maybe also some biases. So let me start and jump into the things. It's the first time I'm talking about these things, you have to know. So the slides are very busy. I might flip a few, don't worry. You can have them also if you like. But my talk circles all around this cycle of publishing, which is actually peer-reviewed publishing happened since about 300 years almost. Yeah. So it's nothing new, and it's this symbiosis between the scientists, the blue parts, and the publishers, the red ones. And I will talk a lot about challenges. So in this cycle, we have all around the clock, we have challenges. And I will very briefly, before focusing on 7 big ones, just to bring you a bit back into thinking about what it is. I think you all know what the challenges are on the author side. I don't want to have to go into the detail. You know the pressure to publish. You know there is mixed quality of reviews. You are stressed by rejections, etc. And you are also stressed about this new vision, which is now a requirement to publish open access, which is not easy, and we'll come back to that. So, I mean, these stressors, you know those. I'm sure most of you have acted as reviewers, so you know the challenges of reviewers nowadays, so the workload, these ever-changing platforms, the varying review models that you have to learn for each journal. Is it open or blind or etc.? It's usually unpaid. It's usually unseen. No incentives to do it. And there is this flood of invitations that are a real struggle. It looks like spanning. I don't go into the models. There is innovation, of course, in this business, or things change. But let me move to the challenge of editors. And I'm sure some of you have experience as editors. Here again, we can complain about the workload. It's often unpaid, very intransparent. Yeah, so some editors are paid heavily, others zero. It's increasingly complex in this publishing environment. The non-response of scientists in the peer review is terribly difficult. I will show something on that. Poor quality of reviews happens. The pressure of some publishers on the editors to follow their decisions. I just show you here, last year, maybe some of you were in the CC of this very huge distributor of a colleague of us who has stepped down as the editor-in-chief of 2 Elsevier journals because he had it enough seen that they intervene as publishers in the decision of the editors who rejects or accepts papers. Well, last but not least, of course, the publishers are crucial and they have challenges. You should appreciate, you should understand, it's not easy to be a publisher. Very high competition, incredible greed. I will show you data on that. Open access for many older publishers who did not start immediately with that model. It's a real challenge to move into that new model. The complexity with IT platforms. Nowadays, artificial intelligence is absolutely crucial for them, both a challenge, both a risk and also an opportunity. They have to handle very complex invoicing. Almost every author has another rule. And last point, very important, publishers are engaged in preventing fraud. And that is now bringing me to the next list of the real challenges I want to talk to you today. I start with the predatory to get rid of that, because it's one example of fraud. Well, what is predatory? I mean, some argue we should not even use the term anymore. I would agree, actually, because there are so many gray zones. But it's defined as publishing against payment without any peer review. Yeah? So you just have this service, you send it somewhere, you pay something, and it's published. Of course, there are characteristics, and you can find them online, about what predatory publishers do. I just want to emphasize, without going through the details, I mean, some of those you would encounter in normal journals as well. Yeah? I mean, poor editing might happen, unclear ownership. It's a very intransparent business in general, so not just the predatory parts. So I think we should be broader and look into and talk about fraud. It is all about fraud that happens today in science on a terribly high level. And it's extremely challenging for the publishers and, of course, the editors. There are more than 10,000 predatory journals out. Some are even indexed in PubMed. So you see they are very smart in cheating. There is a demand. There's this ugly symbiosis, as some call it, of the publishers and the scientists. There are some 400,000 papers published in predatory journals every year. So they are just agreeing to pay and be published. There are business in selling authorship. Paper mill industry is a terrible new move. So you get just papers that are fabricated, sold to scientists who pay. Multiple parallel submissions sounds like a little fraud compared to the rest, but it's there and it's terrible for us as editors. Plagiarism. And the last point is actually the flip side of this whole story, and I will mention examples. There is also a fraud in the other sense. There are anonymous defamations of people who list blacklists of so-called predatory journals. Our journals ended up on such a list about 2 years ago. It was terrible stress for us, unbelievable. These are criminal people, they are anonymous. You don't know with whom you are exchanging emails and explaining that they should remove your journals, which they have done. But I mean, it's terrible. I mean, the fraud is a huge problem, but stop here with talking about fraud. I'm not talking about predatory anymore. It's now about the rest, because I think the predatory discussion is, in fact, distracting us from looking into the real problem of the real science publishing where we are all part of. So this brings me to the other points. First, the growth. Well, you should understand there are 3 parts that amplify the natural growth. And the first is the natural growth. Look at this. I mean, this is the annual growth rate in scientific publishing in the last 60 years. It's a very steady upward trend, some 5% plus per year. Well, is this a lot? Well, you can compare it across disciplines. You can compare, you can look into citations. You can look into the PhD graduation increases. These are the OECD numbers, or in a specific topic like epidemiology, the growth rate is a little bit larger. But I mean, it's for all of these indicators, it is similar. I mean, there is a natural growth in science, and we should be happy about that. Yeah? We should not question that. And this is our field in terms of the Clarivate Web of Science categories. And many journals that you use and that I used in my career are in that category: public environmental occupational health. So you will see that PEOH several times today. So this is the growth development in publications in our field. Now some 50,000 articles per year. You see the typical pattern in many sciences of the pandemic. That was an enormous strain, an enormous stress, and it's coming back to, let's say, normal. So you can draw the line that is kind of the normal growth, but there is growth. You will see that curve once again, but just let me show the second point. Rejection cascade. What do I mean by that? This is this terrible attitude to reject and reject and reject. I'm sure all of you could tell me the stories of how many times you went to another journal, always to serious journals, and at the end it's getting published. That is extremely inefficient. It creates a lot of work for scientists, for the publishers and the editors, and it's insane. It's very expensive. Frontiers, our publisher, has looked into what happens with the articles that their journals, which are some 200 journals or 150 now, journals, 175,000 articles that got rejected by some of the Frontiers journals. They looked in the fate of those articles, and you see where they got published. Yeah? So something is really questionable, if not wrong, in this system, and this creates an additional strain beyond the growth. Yeah, and don't believe that this is about quality. Yeah? So this is the first narrative you should dump. This is not about quality. It is about the pride of high rejection rates. Yeah, journals would tell you that. I'm very proud. Our journal, wow, we have some 80% rejection rates. So, limiting the number of publications, that's an economic model. Yeah. It creates the demand, you stop the supply, and it protects your impact factor. Yeah? So pay attention not to publish too much in a journal. It's a tradition, and it's a power game. It's a power game of us, editors-in-chief, to tell you no. Yeah? So, and it creates this enormous flood. Third point, we have a huge peer review crisis, and I'm so glad nobody in the room is part of that. So you are all doing the review. I can tell you our story. It's horrible. We are suffering like crazy. We published an editorial on that. Pre-pandemic times, we had some third of the people that we would ask who would agree to do the review. That number is coming down. We are now below 4%. So I invite some 30 plus reviewers. And then, yes, you can make the math yourself. I cannot do that myself. I need the artificial intelligence tool of Frontiers, which is excellent, to invite with some certain specificity and sensitivity the wrong and the right people. It creates a flood of automatic reminders because people are slow. It looks like spamming the scientists, which then decide, oh, I have enough with the review. I stop doing that. Yeah. So it's crazy. I mean, this is a vicious circle. We published on it. We made a survey even to ask people what is an incentive to do a review, and I will tell you later on the only incentive we have identified. Anyway, that is the growth. The next very, very big challenge, we should be very open about it, it's inequity, the supremacy in scientific publishing. I have shown you the red line. And then I thought last week, oh, let me check my favorite journals in my career. I don't know why Nature is there. I have never published in Nature. But I mean, the rest is the fantastic papers. Yes, I have published in those. So I thought, well, what did they publish in the last 20 years? Since 2000, when I published my first Lancet article. What's going on there? You see it. They have decreased and flattened the number of publications per year. Well, you can make the math as an epidemiologist. I show you here the probability that your science gets accepted in these top leading journals. Today, my chance to be in Lancet is 10 times lower than it was in 2000. And that's really a questionable number. You have never seen that, but it's something to think about. And of course, all these journals, with one exception, are hybrid journals, paywall journals, and not open access. So I would say academia must think about the solution to secure the right of young generations of good scientists to publish publicly funded research. And yes, let's be clear, and blunt, subscription-based journals, they do refuse to take up the responsibility for the natural growth of good science. And there is always this narrative, you will see it, many people tell you, oh, now there is so much trash getting submitted and published. I mean, nobody should tell me that this growth is just trash. It is not. It's a growing scientific community of a lot of decent people who try very hard to understand what's going on. These subscription-based publishers, they hinder and delay the move to open access. So in green, I have to emphasize here and be blunt, thanks to the open access movement with its publishers, the increasing demand for publications gets really, at least in part, accommodated in the last 20 years. So, another inequity, high-income country supremacy. Read the article of Zeje. She has really made very clear, very clean words how we still live in a post-colonial science publishing world. It's really terrible. Brady has looked into that with interviews with scientists in other parts of the world, in the non-Western world, and they came very much to the conclusion there are a lot of hindrances that have nothing to do with quality, that block them to be part of the top scientific community. So I was interested in what's happening in these famous journals, and I tell you my conclusion already right away. Choose your affiliation wisely if you want to publish in a high-ranking journal. Yeah, and given the landslide happening last night in Labour, I'm very glad that at least I can advise you to move to the UK. So this is Lancet Public Health. The landscape of public health in Lancet has 20 countries in the year 2023 articles. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad Switzerland is there. It's the UK, the US, it's a bit of China, Australia, Denmark, and the rest are the little ones, and the whole rest of 180 countries is not even present. Then I thought, okay, that's very frustrating, shocking. Let's look into Lancet Global Health. That must be different, isn't it, Rodolfo? Well, the world of Lancet Global Health has 18 first author country affiliations. 18. Well, you see the same usual suspects. Go to the UK, to the US. Oh, here you can even choose France or Brazil, but forget about the rest. No comments on that scandal. I tell you, we in our journal, we try very hard since many years. We have a strategy to be global, to be international. It is not easy. I could tell you a lot about the difficulties. We are currently not happy. We cover something like 55 countries in the last year. It's a tough thing you have to do. You have to work on it. It's really difficult, but I think we have to do it. And one comment I cite here, which is one reason why it is so difficult for us editors to make a change. Well, I get these reviews from so-called Western scientists who tell me, well, it's not novel at all. It has already been shown in blah, 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 and I would simply reject that. So those people, first of all, they forget that the editor-in-chief decide what should be in a journal and what not. So this is a wrong comment anyway. But then, wait a minute. I thought about my own career. In 1990, I started publishing, 1992. Of course, I was not the first to publish on air pollution. All our reviewers sit in the US, and they could all say, well, we in the US, we know that. And then came Europe to figure out what air pollution is. Today, we have China and India to figure out the problems, and starting some science in Africa. So is something wrong there? Can we just refuse them from participating in the science endeavor? I think we have to reflect this. And the last inequity story goes now to the APC charges, the fees you pay for publishing open access. Very stressful for low-income country scientists. I mean, also for some in these countries here, but it's very difficult. I don't go into detail what we do in promoting fee waivers for those country first authors, but I mean, there must be ways to fund the APC fees. So that brings me to the business model. And now I have to check how I do with the timing. No, not so bad. So the business model. I mean, publishing is a business. The traditional subscription-based model is interesting. It survived for a very long time. It's very intransparent, confidential, super expensive. Subscriptions give you, your university, the right to read. The rest is behind paywalls. And the costs for authors are, of course, zero. The number of publications are kept artificially low, stable, and you can go whatever of these journals. I mean, just look at that, what they did. It's very easy. Why? I mean, if you pay a subscription, every additional publication they will publish per year is nothing else but costs without any additional income. So why would you do that? I mean, no reasonable person would do that. So they keep this very stable. The open access model has another characteristic. The reading access is now free. To make that possible, the costs, these APC fees, must be covered in the gold open access. It's paid by the authors or their funders. And in the diamond model, which is a small niche, a wonderful niche, we should all go for it. It's also called platinum model. These costs are already covered by some funder. Number of publications, they are not necessarily regulated in this model because you can make the math. I mean, with every publication that gets published, you get some money, so you can afford to increase the number just as submissions of good paper. It's coming back. Good. The hybrid model is the most important current one for the traditional ones. So the hybrid model practiced by the subscription-based publishers. There, and it's all over now, open access is optional. They offer you that with Is this also running? Yeah. While you change the battery, I will just use this one. So, hybrid, the gold open access has APC fees charged to the authors, and the number of publications for this type of gold open access journals, if you ask me, if you look into the data and clarify, I would say there is manipulation going on there as well. Neil, thank you very much. So, we come back to that. So this paywall is really a scandal. And you know what I did last week? I thought, oh, what happened with my Lancet paper in 2000? If I'm not locked into the university. Well, I can buy my paper. You see that? You can buy my paper. Unfortunately, I don't get anything. Not a single dollar of the $40 Elsevier is still charging for my paper so that you can read it. Unbelievable. So if you believe Lancet is on a different planet today, it is not. That's the scandal of today, 79% in this last half year, still behind paywalls. 7% of the 23% of the 30 publicly funded papers, research of publicly funded sciences, are still are only open access, and the rest is still in the paywalls. Come on. I mean, you know, there is this big move for open science and open access, and there are these big players who behind the screen have their ways to delay that, to block it, and to make their game. So what is the game? Well, it's the Gucci success model, I figured out. Why do I call it the Gucci model? I had this shock listening to the radio when Switzerland lifted the ban during the pandemic, yeah. So when we could go out first time, so they made interviews with these millennials in the Zurich Bahnhofstrasse talking to this lady and saying, oh, what did you do today? Oh, it's so wonderful that we can go out. Yeah, I had to go to Gucci and buy this bag. So the moderator was asking, well, how much did you spend? Oh, you know, it's crazy, but I mean, after all these months of lockdown, it's 4,000 Swiss francs. Okay. Why? Because it's, I mean, I don't know. I have seen similar bags for lower prices. But that's the Gucci, the brand. So that's what's happening in science. The branding is the business model of the traditional publishers in transition to open access. So these Guccis, what they do, they launch new gold open access journals with their brand names. Lancet in public health, Nature in immunology. What do? Yeah, they create that. They hire a postdoc. They call that the editor-in-chief. They hire a scientist, also a postdoc, usually they call them the handling editor. They, together, they lead and control the entire peer review and all the decisions. They list, in addition, an international advisory board. Fantastic names, the most famous names in the field. It's a name-dropping exercise because they have zero role. They do nothing. Yeah? And I talked to many of those. They limit the supply, again, number of articles per year. They don't just go up. They will go up once they have reserved their market niche, I'm sure, in a few years, because they protect the impact factor. And you can look into all those nose journals. After 2 years, in the third year, they get the skyrocketing top impact factor of all journals in the field as a new journal. Wow. That's really Gucci, I have to say. We would never be able to do that. So they have this high demand, which supports their outrageous APC fees. So that is the model, and I list here Lancet approach of Elsevier. Currently, they have 22 gold open access Lancet branded journals. More to come, more to see. Always immediately on the top of the ranking, 6,000 articles, 2023. You can estimate what's the income, some 30 million. And in parallel, they get the subscriptions for some of the journals, of course, and that's the famous double dipping. So you see here the APC fees. Very few have low ones, reasonable ones, but actually most of them are between 5,000 and 7,000, which is insane. There is a science, there's a literature about the true costs of publishing. And of course, depending on what the publishers do, this may vary a lot. But these numbers are ridiculous. MDPI, an open access publisher, has an average APC of 1,250. Yeah. So no matter how you look at it, it is insane. Why do we do that? Why do we as scientists do that? Why do our funders pay those APC? Well, I showed the case of Lancet Public Health. I looked into that. One editor-in-chief, staff, hired postdocs. You see them here. And please, don't take me wrong. I'm not bashing on those people. Yeah, I mean, they are nice people. I heard people saying, well, she does a wonderful job. Yes, but they are not scientists. Yeah, they are not frontier scientists able, capable to handle the review, but that's what they do. And then you have these wonderful people, Ilona Kickbush, I asked her, I asked Martin McKee whether he has to do anything because he's listed on this international advisory board. Ilona sent me a very short answer to my question, how many meetings did you have? How many times they get advice? Zero, finish. Yeah. It's nothing. It's a name-dropping exercise so that you feel like, oh my goodness, this is a fantastic journal. Nature is even worse. They have these new Nature branded, but only 4 of them are called open access. The others are called transition journals, and they are very proud that they offer you the possibility to publish open access. Isn't that wonderful? 10,290 euro. Well, let's just do it, because it's Nature. Well, let's be serious. If you read the guidelines of the International Committee of Medical Journal Edits, they're very clear. Journal owners should not interfere in the evaluation, selection, scheduling, or editing of individual articles, either directly or by creating an environment that strongly influences decisions. Why is nobody talking about that? All these new journals do exactly that. Editors-in-chief, handling editors are staff of the publisher. We would never do that in our journals. Yeah? Well, it's a business model. I don't know whether you follow the stock market. You better do. So that's the stock market in London, because that's where Relix is actually listed. Ha! And Relix is Elsevier. Yeah. What is Financial Times saying this year? Relix or its previous incarnations has been the top performing stock on the FTSE 100 in the index's 40-year history. Isn't that fantastic? Since 2009, total shareholder returns more than 1,000%. The company has outperformed all the others in the stock 100 by 328% in that period. Well, I also read this one. Elsevier spends 400,000 for lobbying in Brussels to make sure that this transition to open access is really in favor of their business model and not too fast and not too difficult. Yeah? And if you read OpenS, the whole strategy, yes, you see them, they had some influence, not totally, but some. The CEO, Engström, I think he's from Sweden, he has one of the highest salaries of all these companies. So I don't care about business, don't take me wrong, but this business relies almost entirely on tax money. Science is funded, good science is funded by tax money. So I feel a bit embarrassed. I thought maybe the Swiss National Science Foundation should buy some of these shares on the stock to be at least participate a bit in this success story. So you see here the operating margins of these companies. Taylor, Francis, Elsevier, Springer is missing because there's not much information. This is unbelievable. The performance of these companies is beyond. It would be a dream for Apple, Google, and Amazon to be as successful. They are not. The publishing, private publishing of publicly funded research results is one of the most profitable businesses in the world. So you should be proud to be part of it, isn't it? Well, let me come to a next story, and that brings more the problem to us back. Us, who we are in this room, our supervisors, our commissions, it's the toxic currency of academia, the impact factor or the impact fallacy, because it's considered to be a marker of quality, although we know it is not. But it is there, always there. And this is this terrible, vicious cycle. If you look what happens, if you think about your own mindset, what happens in your mind, of course, we like to read the top-ranking journals more than the others. We like to cite them more than the others. We select the journals. The supervisor tells the PhD student, go down the ladder, start on top, and then down. The scientists accept to review, and that's the survey we made. Yes, the single only indicator that is a good incentive for more than 80% of our participants of the survey. If the impact factor is high of a journal, they are far more likely to participate as a reviewer. Yeah, so I mean, this is this world, and yes, Luisa, you ask me, or you seem to ask yourself, why? Well, this is the scientist. It's the glorious dreams of a health scientist. And I tell you my own experience. In the 90s, I was so proud to know a colleague who was publishing in Lancet. And then I started to read and cite Lancet myself. And in 2000, I published in Lancet. There was a party, isn't it? We make a party. I published in Lancet, and thereafter, that's just the tip of everything. I started to be invited as a reviewer for Lancet. Please. Unbelievable. So, it's crazy, despite the declaration of San Francisco, which is very clear about stop this toxic story. It's not an indicator of quality. It's still there, and I'm sure everybody in the room who sits still on these commissions, and I still do that, we know that. At the bottom line, promotion and everything, funding that you bring in and the impact factor remains the single story. And why? Because no alternative standards, metrics have been really established or made it through the system. Well, let's assume impact factor is a marker for quality. Ha! Here we come, we all have a huge problem in our science. In 1 year, our quality dropped by almost 50%. Isn't that amazing? Not only our journal, Lancet in Public Health, went down from 50 to 25. The year before, they were even at 75. So is Lancet Public Health collapsing? Frontiers down from 5 to 3? Well, this is the metric influenced by the pandemic. You can explain that by a lot of mathematics. 80% of all the journals in our field have dropped drastically this year. Yeah, I also looked into our field publications in 2023. I mean, how is this citation going on? We have 14% that are published in the top 10% of our impact factor ranking journals. But I mean, 66% of all citations come from all the other journals. So are they irrelevant? And you know, I don't know whether anyone has a Chinese background in the career. In China, that currency matters directly in some institutions for your salary. Yeah? The higher the citation, the impact factor of the journal where you publish, the more you get paid. Yeah? And not to speak about promotion. So where are we now? We are talking about keeping up the quality standards as the next major challenge. I mean, of course, we should find a way to protect quality in science instead of being driven by all these other factors. Well, I don't know whether we have good news or bad news. I mean, if you go into the details, there are a couple of guidelines. Yes, they are there. There are various indicators. I don't want to go through in detail. I just want to emphasize open access. Yes, the diamond would be really the most perfect model to go for. Far better than the gold and certainly better than hybrid open access. So, I mean, you can come up with indicators. But I thought, why not talk about the elephant in the room of journal quality? Well, where is the journal quality? It's here, and I'm sorry these are only men, which by the way is pretty typical in science, but I mean today editorial boards are also men and women. I didn't find the right picture. But the central determinant of the quality of a journal is ultimately the board of the editors. It's the editor-in-chief, the handling editors. And of course, the structure, workflows in the journals differ. It's not always the same. But I mean, they are those who make the decision for rejection and acceptance. So they decide what's getting published. So, as mentioned before, our Gucci brands, they don't have independent editors. And these editors are not even experts in the field. So maybe do we have a problem? I don't know, but last year I went back home. About a week later, I got tantalized by a Lancet in Planetary Health publication. Because it was in my field and I thought I'm retired, I should not be stressed about what's getting published now. Association between particulate matter, air pollution, and clinical antibiotic resistance. A global analysis. Oh my God. These findings substantiate that PM2.5 is a primary factor driving global antibiotic resistance, suggesting global health could benefit from mitigating antibiotic resistance with PM2.5 controls. Never heard about. And I have advised WHO and the Swiss Commission and the Americans how to regulate air pollution. How silly. I didn't think about that. They made a burden assessment. And we in Switzerland, that was my big major project in the 90s. We have defined how to do the burden assessment. What you need, and some of you have taken the classes now here. They assigned some 30+% of the burden of antibiotic resistance mortality to air pollution. Oh my gosh. So I thought I better read what they do. Well, they did. they filled a little gap. You know, there's a little gap in air pollution science. Nobody has taken any of the big cohorts to look into that association because we don't have data on this genetic material that sits on the PM 2.5, because some Chinese scientists have found that some fractions of the genetic material of antibiotic-resistant bacteria sit on the particles. So I haven't found any cohort that looked into that association. Well, they haven't found either. So they found a very easy, fast way to do that. The study is an ecological correlation across 160 countries, aggregated DAS data due to antimicrobial resistance, country average PM 2.5, and guess what? That's the line, that's the association, that's the slope, and with the slope you are so happy as an impact assessor you can calculate the burden of disease. 30%. So I was shocked about this pathetic conclusion, which, because it's in the Gucci, everybody was talking about. Yeah, I mean, all the big scientists, even Nature had an editorial on it, a commentary. They collected already 30 citations with this bullshit. Sorry. So, and of course, that's very useful for the impact factor. So what did we do? I was in contact with the editors-in-chief, back and forth, and we published on purpose, not in the same journal, because we don't want to sell them another citation opportunity. So in our journal, we have published this: be aware, science is not ready to calculate the antimicrobial resistance deaths due to air pollution. What I have not yet done, I have not yet submitted a request to retract this trash science. It should be retracted. They know, the office now knows it, and they told me that they don't take action on their own. I have to submit all the arguments why they should retract it. And guess what? I mean, of course, poor people, they have zero training in epidemiology. Neither the editor-in-chief nor the handling editor. They had 5 reviews. I haven't seen those. Yeah, and that's the answer. Yeah, so that's what you get if you have editors that are not really trained in what they should review and make decisions on. So I show you this business of the quality of editorial boards. Look at this. I mean, these are all famous journals. Some of you might use. All of them, you can look and go. They have an editorial board that is independent of the publisher. And I mean, these are quite some famous names. Yeah, and I'm here on the International Journal of Public Health. My age index is also more than my age. So, and then you go to this Lancet, Lancet Public Health, Lancet Planetary Health, Lancet Global Health, BMC Public Health of Springer. Well, these are all these staff people. Yeah, nice people, staff people, but they're not experts, they're not scientists from the front line, and that's just part of the business model. So, my advice to you, check out the editorial governance model of a journal. I know you never did in the past, I never did in the past, but it's worth looking at it, and it may influence a little bit your decision. So this brings me to the last one, and this is really in the middle of us, of ourselves, of you and me not anymore. What time is it? Okay. We, the scientists, we should remind ourselves, we are ultimately the cause of the crisis, and also we are the solution, because we do the research, we decide what to write, we do the review publications, we do reject, accept decisions if we are independent editors, we evaluate peers based on their CVs, which should not be based on impact factors, but that's how it goes. So you can go down the list. I mean, it is the scientific community. It's not the publisher. Elsevier has never told us or the Science Foundation that we should function the way we function. It is an invention. It's a system, a mindset of us, of our community, of our leaders. So I think you have opportunities for the future. I would advise you, inform yourself about the journal and the publisher and the business behind. Discuss it with the peers, with your advisor, supervisor, make informed decisions, understand where to submit and review, prioritize decisions to be evidence-based, promote and call for diamond open access because it removes many of the conflicts of interest, And last point, stand up against black and white argumentation, defamation against proper gold open access publishing. And that is also out. So do you have resources? I skipped this. There are supporting resources. There is even a checklist from Think, Check, Submit website. This is nice. But I want to go to this list of narratives that you might know. They are all out there. My colleagues, I myself did it a few years ago. First of all, dump these narratives, and then you can push the reset button and start thinking about what to do in the publishing. Yeah? I mean, open access is not more expensive. That's not true, and science shows it. If you flip to open access, you don't need a publisher anymore. Some people believe that. No, you still need the service. Oh, I want to go for the last one. Publications in special issues are of poorer quality than those in regular issues. Well, there is one paper using a completely stupid other ecologic study. It's not even peer-reviewed. It's just hanging out there on a preprint. But the Swiss National Science Foundation, at least one of its important influencing people, they decided to use that as evidence to tell now the poor Swiss scientists, Swiss Science Foundation is not paying the APC anymore if your article is published in a special issue rather than in a regular issue. Although there is zero evidence that if you publish in a special issue, the quality is poorer of the Swiss scientists. Well, I know the hidden agenda behind it, but we just published again an editorial against this stupid idea. Why talk about chocolate? Well, it goes back to this famous New England Journal funny article showing the ecologic association between chocolate eating per capita and the Nobel Prize rate across the world countries, and Switzerland is on top, and now you can think that you should eat more chocolate. So that's exactly the source of information where they came up with this absolutely stupid, unfounded decision. Yeah, and let me tell you, we, and we say that in our editorial, are very proud. Since many years, we use special issues to strengthen the strategy of our journal. And I'm very happy to announce that EEPE and SSPH Plus, we proudly launch very soon, maybe tomorrow or next week, a new call related to a best paper, Rodolfo Salacci Award. This whole thing has been initiated by Rodolfo. The health of displaced people, a challenge for epidemiology and public health. That's a special issue, yes, and it will be of good quality because we have good editors together with Rodolfo. Read The Predatory Paradox of Amy Kerber. She did a wonderful job in addressing exactly this problem of the black and white thinking in the science community. If we don't get rid of that, we have a problem. And I really tell you, if you follow some of their social media bubbles, it's crazy. I mean, it has conspiracy-like characteristics. They're bashing, well, let's say it here, they're bashing on MDPI and on frontiers. That's the hobby, yeah? Well, quality gaps, retractions are a number that you could use, and there is a publication showing that retractions are no way just a problem of open access journals. They are hybrid journals, and actually, if you want to go back to our field, Lancet Public Health has about a 7-time higher retraction rate than the frontiers in public health. I don't know why, I mean, but just to tell you, it's not an indicator of black and white. As mentioned, frontiers is one that people bash on it, and we have many good colleagues who raise the eyebrows if I say, well, we publish with frontiers. Frontiers? What? Isn't that strange? And then I ask them, well, can you tell me what you heard? No, I don't know, I just heard. Rumors go. Yeah, so rumors go, and they have made it into a very nice editorial in BMJ. So Brian Owens, the last sentence, it's really, I mean, he compares with Elsevier, Springer, and others. And then they say, I don't have a lot of sympathy for the idea that frontiers is any worse. Yes, and that's our conclusion after all these years. I have zero evidence to tell that frontiers is worse than what we had with Springer or what others have with Elsevier. I mean, they are a publisher. It is about money. But what people don't talk about, you should look on what publishers do with their money. Very, very interesting. In the interest of time, I will skip that, but follow Frontiers for Young Minds. It's a fantastic project, education project for teenagers, science, a diamond open access journal in many languages now. It's fully funded out of their revenues. And also the Planet Prize. They spend 3 million a year to give 1 million to 3 people who have written the so-called best paper in any journal, not just in Frontiers. These are the winners this year. Yeah, so let me finish with radical options to consider, and I might keep that also during the discussion. I'm doing some of these radical things now. I'm in question preprints, because it's without peer review. Submit only to gold open access journals. Engage as reviewers. Choose wisely where to act as editor, reviewer and author. I boycott hybrid publishers now. I don't review anymore for them. Evaluate the editorial model as mentioned, and do not prioritize based on impact factor alone. Question the dominance of these Guccis. Engage in your commissions, faculty commissions, to replace the old model. We have to make a change internally. Yeah, we don't have to wait on the publishers. And check out engagements of publishers beyond publishing business. I have never heard about an Elsevier or a Relics Prize. I don't know, maybe you have heard, tell me. So in sum, question the mainstream, empower scientists to regain full independent leadership in peer review publishing. Thank you very much.